Hello, hello, you guys. Welcome back to another episode of That's My Personal Business, and welcome, Amy Natalie. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
It's so good to be here. Thank you for having me here. I'm loving all
Yes.
your beautiful plants in the background. I am totally a plant lover. I have way too many plant babies.
Oh my gosh, I was literally just doing another podcast episode, and I was talking about how, like, in this apartment, I've gotten way too many, and now I'm like, what am I supposed to do when I move? And I have 10,000 plants.
It's actually really cute. Last time I moved, I had like taken all of them from all around my house and put them all in one place, and they looked so cute together. So
Wait, that's
it's kind of fun.
adorable. Yeah, I want to
Yeah.
see them all together, like all in
Yeah.
their own little family.
Yeah, yeah. My partner is actually going to be moving in this summer and he has a lot of plants too. So we're going to just be on overflow.
Oh, that's so exciting. A little greenhouse moment. I love
Yeah,
that.
totally.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, for those that don't know you yet, could you give us a little introduction on yourself and what you do?
Sure. So for those who I haven't met yet, welcome. I am Amy Natalie and I am a women's intimacy and empowerment coach and really support women to come home to their bodies and to their authentic selves. And one of the ways that I guide women back home to themselves is through feminine empowerment work. So I work with a lot of women who tend to be stuck in their mind, who are in their masculine energy. They feel overwhelmed, they are stuck in self doubt, and they want to feel more connected to their confidence and who they are authentically. And we do that through helping them to be more connected to their feminine energy. So I'm sure we'll
Mm.
talk more about that today. And yeah, I really feel like my soul mission is to support women to get out of the toxic masculine paradigm where they are playing the role of the good girl or they're just like following the rules, but that's not really who they are. And when we're in that space, it's like we're unhappy, we're unfulfilled, we feel miserable. And like I've personally been there and it's affected all aspects of my life. And so this really is a deeper conversation around mental health. It's a deeper conversation around like your own happiness and fulfillment and what that means to you.
How did you, before we like dive into the nitty gritty, how did you get started in this? Like, what's your origin story with everything?
Mm. Yeah, I think to go way back, it really started with my body speaking to me. In my early 20s, I had really bad digestive issues. I was struggling with hormone imbalances and I was exhausted. I was like in my early 20s and I had adrenal fatigue and was just burnt out. And through that, I started learning that I was constantly in my masculine energy. I was in my masculine energy at the time I was married, and I was in my masculine energy in my relationship. I was in my masculine energy with my exercise, with my nutrition. And I was really at an all-time low with my mental health. I was for over a decade, I struggled with chronic depression and anxiety, and I was on medications. I was going to see therapists, and I was like really struggling. And that led me to deeper self discovery and being like, there's got to be something else. Like, there's more to life than this. This isn't how it's supposed to be. And I knew that I had a greater potential, and I felt like I was the one standing in my own way. And so, went on this personal development and spiritual journey and really started to see that the life that I had created was totally out of alignment with who I was. I was, making decisions to try and make everyone else happy. And it landed me in a marriage that it wasn't bad. Like we weren't fighting, there wasn't toxic. It was just like, it wasn't aligned for who I really am. There wasn't that deep soul connection. There wasn't that deep emotional connection. There wasn't that deep physical connection. It was like, it was just fine. Like it was okay. And that's not what I believe I came here for. And so, yeah, I ended up through this journey really finding myself and cultivating the courage and confidence to release that old identity, to let those parts of myself go that were people pleasing and perfectionism and all of that. And really emerged as a embodied confident woman who knows who I am, knows what I want, and who's here to make a big impact in the world. And I'm here 6 years later and I'm in a really powerful thriving, beautiful relationship where I do have the intimacy that I knew was possible. And I had to be willing to release and had to be willing to let go of this old life and this old version of myself in order to call that in.
Mm.
So that's a little bit about the journey.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so for those that like, let's go back to basics. For those that like, maybe this is a new concept, even hearing about like feminine energy, masculine energy. Can you kind of break down what those mean and kind of how they manifest?
Yeah, I'd love to. And I think this is a really great place to start. So, the terms masculine and feminine are often confused with male and female. And the way that we're using them in this context is more about the energetics. And these are energetics of duality. So we have in Chinese culture, we've got the yin and the yang. And then in Indian culture, we've got Shiva and Shakti. And we've got light and dark, black and white. We've got, this duality. And so this ancient teaching, which is from ancient tantric teachings and yogic teachings, and it's really the laws of the universe. It's like how this world works. If we didn't have masculine and feminine, we wouldn't have creation. We wouldn't exist. So the masculine energy. So to clarify that, we all have masculine and feminine energy within us, no matter what our gender is, right?
Mhm.
So, masculine energy can be described as the doing energy. It's more logical, it's thinking, it's planning, it's organizing, and we need that energy. Feminine energy is more creativity, intuition, it's feeling energy, it's being energy. So we can also think about it. I like the analogy of in nature, we have the riverbed, which is the masculine, it's the container that holds the river. And then the water is the feminine, it's the flow.
Mhm.
And so, what's happened in our culture over the last few thousand years because of capitalism and patriarchy is that we have swung way too far into the masculine, where we've lost touch with nature, we've lost touch with our intuition, we've lost touch with our feelings. And not only that, we have shame around those aspects of ourselves. And we get so much of our validation and so much of our value from how much we do and how much we accomplish and how much we achieve. And it's no wonder that women feel depleted and depressed and disconnected because we've lost touch with this sacred feminine energy that lives in all of us. So that's kind of a little background. And one way that women can know if they're stuck in their masculine energy is if you're in your head all of the time. If you're feeling stressed out, you're overwhelmed, you're anxious, like that's very much the anxious or the masculine energy where you're constantly doing all the time, where it's hard for you to slow down, right?
Mm.
Where you feel disconnected from your emotions. Or on the other hand, if you're too far in your feminine, which I call feminine overflow, it's like you're always in your emotions. You have a lot of ideas, you have a lot of creativity, but you don't follow through on them. You feel ungrounded and floaty and you feel unproductive all of the time. Too far in the feminine. So we need both of those, and it's about cultivating a healthy relationship with both your masculine and feminine energy and creating harmony between them.
Ooh, so how does one start to do that? Like, what does that look like? How does one begin the journey? Yeah, tell us all about that.
Yeah. I feel like a really beautiful entry point is recognizing that masculine energy is in the mind and feminine energy is in the body. And I think the most simple practice that people know of and are familiar with that help to bring us out of the body and out of the mind and into the body is yoga. Yoga is the most common practice, and it's really about using that breath, right? It's about coming into your body. So that could be through movement, right? It could be through dancing. It could be through yoga. It could be through walking in nature. It's really about also like I like to think of the feminine as the soul. So it's like, where do you feel most connected to yourself? Is it through meditation? Is it through breath work? Is it through journaling? Is it through having deep, meaningful conversations with other people? where even like where is your creativity, right? Like tapping into your creativity, tapping into your sensuality. These are all different aspects of the feminine. So in my book, The Feminine Way, I talk about these different principles that the feminine embodies, but to really start, it's like it's the slowing down and tuning in and connecting with yourself in this deeper way.
What are like, so you would say that like slowing down is kind of like the first step. How does one, I know when I've like tried to practice getting into my feminine more because I'm a Capricorn rising, I'm a Sagittarius. I'm like the urge to work, I'm like a type 1 Enneagram. Like the urge to work is overwhelming. I'm like constantly in my masculine. I have to make much more of an effort to be in my feminine energy. Once I slow down, I find myself often like, what now? Like, what do I do now other than just like sit here and be slow? What does one do to start connecting with the feminine when you're like fairly disconnected from it?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I've totally been predominantly in my masculine energy, like I shared in my story, and it's been a journey, like it is uncomfortable at first. And I just want to start there that, when we're so used to being in our masculine energy, it's uncomfortable to do things differently. It's
Mm.
uncomfortable to slow down. Our mind is addicted to checking our phones, it's addicted to accomplishing tasks, to getting shit done. And so, like on a deeper level, the work that gets to be done is looking at the deeper levels of unworthiness, of like, where are we seeking our validation? Why
Mm.
are we, continuing to perpetuate this cycle of overworking and overdoing, when like, are we really fulfilled? Are we really happy? Is this really working for us? Is this sustainable? So that's like the deeper work. I would say the in that moment where you're like slowing down, what might that look like for you? Let's use an example. So like for you, if I said, okay, we're like finding a way or an activity to slow down and be present with yourself, what would that look like for you?
Ooh, I would say probably journaling. I feel like that's when I like really come into my feminine because I like force myself to like think about how I'm feeling. And
Mm,
like, I know you said, but then I'm like, oh, but is that masculine? Because it's like still in your head.
mm. Yeah, we do live in a culture where we highly intellectualize our
Hmm.
feelings. So this is something that I see a lot with women that I work with, especially, intelligent women, ambitious women, women who have, gone to therapy and done some personal development work. Like you have a lot of awareness of, okay, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling scared, I'm
Hmm.
feeling sad, I'm feeling pissed off. Like there's awareness there, right? Now, the deeper layer of that is actually feeling the feeling.
Mm.
And this is where I see so many women getting stuck, is that they're thinking about the feelings. Thinking about the feelings is being aware is only the first step. But that's what keeps people in these states of anxiety and in these states of depression, is because we haven't learned how to feel the emotion. So I teach my clients a process called emotional alchemy, which is a process of, it's a somatic process of feeling the feelings in your body and then releasing and expressing those feelings so that they can move through you.
Mm.
I don't know if you've heard about the book, The Body Keeps the Score, but
Yes.
yeah, I think a lot
Hmm.
of people have. And it's like, trauma lives in our body, emotions live in our body. And if we stuff it down or we ignore it, then it stays there. But if we can feel it, that allows us to heal it and to release it and to create space for more of what we want. So, one of the basic practices when you're in that space, it's great. You can journal, right? And then once you've gotten that out and you're aware of it, you can simply close your eyes and put your hand on your heart. And you can take a few breaths and you can say, what am I feeling in my body right now? And what we're looking for is sensation, right? We're looking for, do I feel tight? Do I feel fluttery? Is there a heaviness that I'm feeling? Is there any sharp pain? Am I feeling numb? Like just starting to notice the sensations in your body. And from that exploration of, what am I feeling right now? There may be a memory that comes up. There may be tears that come up. There may be anger that comes up. There may be again that numbness. And instead of being like, huh, why is this here? And going into the head of like, oh, this is because my mom did this and because
Mhm.
my childhood story about this, right? It's actually like, can I breathe with this emotion? Can I just be here with it without making it wrong, without making up a story? Can I witness it and say, like, it's okay? It's
Mhm.
okay for you to feel scared. It's okay for me to feel angry right now. It's okay for me to feel anxiety. Our feelings, our emotions are actually trying to speak to us. They want our attention. And I find that that's actually our inner child. That's our little girl that we all have inside of us, no matter how confident we seem on the outside, no matter like we're in these adult bodies, but on an emotional level, we have these little beings, these little humans that are still inside of us. And that's when when we feel triggered and when we feel overwhelmed and all that, it's usually our little child, our inner child asking for something. There's a need that's not being met, right?
Mm.
Maybe she needs to hear like everything's going to be okay, or you're doing an amazing job, like I'm so proud of you, I love you exactly as you are, right? And it's through this dialogue with these parts of ourselves and just bringing loving awareness to these parts of ourselves that then that's the deeper healing that happens. And instead of just trying to check all the personal development things off the list, I did the affirmations, I did the journaling, it's like, no, actually this is the deeper healing that we're missing. And it's scary to go there. Like it's
Mm.
not easy. I'm not saying this is easy, but I think it's helpful to have just like a overview of like, this is actually what needs to happen in those moments.
Mm. How do you hold space for this in such a patriarchal capitalistic world? Like, how do you make sure to hold space when we also like, I feel like our survival, we pay for food, we pay for water, we pay for everything we need to survive. So we have to be in our masculine a little. How do you like hold space for this or make sure that it gets the time and attention that it needs?
This is a great question. Yeah, and it's not, the answer isn't only be in your feminine, only feel
Mm.
your feelings all the time. Like that's not the answer either. So I love that you bring that up, and I think it's a great question because people are like, "Wow, that sounds great, but where do I have the time for it?" Or
Yeah.
like, "How am I going to pay my bills when I'm just sitting there feeling my emotions?" I
Mhm.
totally get it. Yeah. So, this is where I find it really helpful to use the masculine structure that we're so good at, right? We're like, okay, I've got my calendar, I've got all this shit I need to do, all of that. We can use that masculine structure to create space for the feminine flow. So, for example, in the mornings, it could be in the mornings or it could be in the evenings. I recommend to have some type of practice in the morning, even if it's just 5 to 10 minutes to start, of taking time to check in, to
Mhm.
connect with yourself, right? And starting there is really it's the starting point of showing up to be present with this part of yourself. So I have a daily devotion practice. It looks different every day. It's not just like sit down and meditate every single day.
Mm.
It's a waking up, putting my hand on my heart and being like, how do I feel today? How does my body feel? How does my mind feel? Okay, based on that, what do I need? Do I need some movement to start? Do I need some breath work? Do I need some to step out in nature? Do I need some journaling? Like what's happening for me and how can I support myself with that?
Mm.
Right? So it's creating that space. And then, for me as a business owner, it's looking at my schedule and it's making sure that I have space, that I'm not back to back with appointments, that I have space for lunch and that I have, space for creative time where I'm working on content, right? So it's like allocating time to create the container. Like we said earlier, that riverbed, we have to create that container for the feminine to be there. And what I've found is that at first it is challenging because it's different and you're like, this isn't productive. And your mind will tell you all the stories
Mhm.
about why you shouldn't do it. However, once you start showing up, what you'll find is that all the other stuff becomes easier. You're like, oh,
Mm.
that used to stress me out and I used to feel overwhelmed by that. But because you're taking time to slow down and be with yourself and you're doing these practices, it allows you to show up from a more grounded, a more confident, a more open, a more easeful place, and everything else gets done.
Mm.
Right. So it's a different way of doing things. And we have to build evidence to be like, oh, I can connect with my feminine energy and be successful. And actually connecting with my feminine energy makes me more successful, right?
Mm.
That's the new paradigm. That's the new way of thinking. And maybe you need examples like to look to other people who are doing it that way to see, oh, I thought that I had to do it this one way, right?
Yeah.
This masculine way. And that's the only way that I know. But now, what if I look to other feminine leaders and women who are doing it differently and see that there is a different way possible? And hopefully, through this conversation, that can open that possibility for everyone who's listening.
I also just like love the reassurance that your brain is going to tell you that it's like useless essentially when you first start, because I think that was honestly some of the most jarring thought patterns that came up when I do try to like step into my feminine. My brain immediately is like, this is a waste of time. Like, we got to get moving. We got to do something. We got to get moving. And so I think it's so comforting to hear that that's like such a normal thing to come up and just something that you should kind of ignore, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting. Like there's so many different narratives that different women have around this. Like for some women it's like it's useless, it's pointless, I'm lazy, I'm unworthy or there's something wrong with me if I like take a break or rest
Mm.
or like I'm not working all the time. Like it's this deeper self-talk, and that comes from the patriarchy, that comes from religion, that comes from our culture, and we've internalized it. So it's like this interesting thing that we do where it's like, okay, we feel like the pressure is actually from the outside world, and yes it is, but it's also then been internalized. And that's the work that we get to do, is unraveling these stories that I'm only worthy if this, I'm only valuable if this. I'm only good enough if I accomplish X, Y, and Z. And then the interesting thing is we accomplish that and then like we don't even take a moment to acknowledge it or celebrate and we're on to the next thing.
Oh,
Right?
no,
It's like this
absolutely.
thing that we do. It's so crazy.
How do you recommend like identifying the stories that you might be telling yourself if you're like not aware that you're telling them to yourself right now?
Mm, yeah. So such a great question. I think it is asking yourself powerful questions, right?
Mm.
So instead of asking the question, what's wrong with me? Or like, why can't I figure this out? Or why do I always do this? Those are disempowering questions, right?
Mm.
But instead, if we came from a place of curiosity and from a place of like looking within and being like, huh, I wonder why I'm feeling this way right now. I wonder what thoughts am I having that are coming up when things feel hard, when I want to give up, when I
Mm.
feel like when I'm having insecurities, what are the actual thoughts? And you can write those down on in your journal, and I recommend to do so. So many times these thoughts are just circulating unconsciously, but
Mhm.
when we bring awareness to them, we bring them to the surface. And I know a lot of people are scared to write them down because they're like, if I do that, then I'm just going to manifest bad things and I'm just being negative and I'm focusing on the things. It's like, yeah, if you don't do that, you're just going to keep unconsciously manifesting those things anyways. So
Mm.
this is where the journaling comes in. And this is also where I find coaching to be really helpful because sometimes we can't see what we can't see.
Mhm.
Right. And so I've worked with hundreds of women and I know the patterns that women go through. I know the patterns that I've had to work through. And so it can be helpful for someone to ask you the right questions and guide you to show you the blind spots, to show you the areas that you can't see. Once you see things that you couldn't see before, you can't unsee them. And it's the same thing. You read a book or you hear a new insight and you're like, oh, I never thought of it that way. Okay.
Mm.
And then now you start to see it all the time. You're like, okay, I'm going to do it differently. But if you can't see it because it's unconscious, it it's really challenging to change it. So that's really where the self-awareness through journaling, having support and mentorship to help you to identify, most of us don't know what it is that's standing in the way of reaching our next level of success, of our happiness, of our fulfillment. Like We just know that we feel stuck and we know
Mm.
we're the ones getting in our own way, but we don't have the tools and the understanding of how to really identify the deeper thing, the deeper belief, right? And
Mm.
then also then how to change that belief. And that's the deeper mindset work that we get to look at.
Do you feel like this is a ongoing process always, or do you feel like there's almost like a switch that flips or something that clicks?
I believe that it is a ongoing practice for a few different reasons. One is that we live in a fear-based world that's constantly reinforcing these old beliefs, right?
Mm.
Also, if you've been thinking this way and believing these thoughts about yourself and the world for 30 plus years, it takes practice to create new beliefs and new thoughts. Now, with that said, when you first start doing mindset work and really the deeper emotional work, to me, it feels more intense. And it's almost like we're moving the big blocks out of the way, like the boulders
Mm.
out of the way.
Mhm.
And that feels hard. And it's called inner work for a reason because we're really doing some self excavation here. Now, once we've moved some of those big blocks, then those are not constantly running the show. Those are no longer in the driver's seat. And they will still come up, but not as often, and they won't be as loud. And you then have the tools to know how to navigate them when they come up. Right. So it it still is an ongoing practice, but I do believe that the more empowered we get and the more that we know how to navigate them when it comes up, it's like it doesn't have to take up so much energy and so much space.
I love that. Do you
Mhm.
think like could you share with us some of your like not quick fixes because I don't think that's a thing. But like some of your favorite actionable things to do that our listeners could like do if they're really stuck or they're not sure how to like start stepping into their feminine. Like what are some of your favorite activities or journal prompts or like actionable things that they could try out?
Mhm. Yeah. Oh my God. Well,
I'm sure you
the
have a million.
I have a million, and this is why I wrote a book about it because people come to me and they're like, "How do I connect with my feminine energy? What do I do?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Let me write this in a whole book so that you have the process." So, what I would say is to start off with is something that I love to do is write down a list of things that bring you joy or that feel pleasurable for you because when we're in our masculine energy, we're often just like doing the things that we should do and that we have to do and that we put pressure on ourselves to do, but then we forget about the stuff that really nourishes our soul and that feels good. And these could be even small things like taking a bubble bath or drinking a warm cup of tea or a warm matcha or whatever. And it's like stepping outside and getting sunshine on my skin, watching the sunset. It could be, like going out dancing, doing something with your hands like pottery or art. And so it's like writing this list down. And maybe like when I first did this, I was like, I don't even remember. Like, I don't even really know what I love because I've just been
Mm.
in such of this like hamster wheel and just doing the things that I'm used to doing, but like simply by bringing awareness, like, oh, I haven't done that in a long time.
Mhm.
Or, oh, I'd like to add even just one of these aspects that bring me pleasure and joy into my life this week.
Mhm.
Right. So I think that's a really nice starting point because we get out of like the mind of what we should do and we get into like the heart and the soul of like, oh yeah, I want my life to feel good. I want it to be yummy. I want it to be playful. I want it to be easeful. And then it's like, okay, so what's going to help you to do that? And then how can you start to infuse that into your life?
Ooh, I love that. I also like, I know there have been times in my life where I've been the same where I'm like, I can't even think of something. Like, I'm so stuck in the hamster wheel that I'm just like, I don't even know what brings me joy anymore. Do you
Mm,
have like any tips for that of how to pull yourself out of that when you're just like, no thoughts, just vibes, you can't get out of it? Like,
yeah.
what does that process look like?
Totally. This is where we can use something that I like to call and that is in like positive psychology, which is positive projections,
Mm.
where it's looking for evidence, looking for examples of other people who you admire or who you aspire to be like. And
Mm.
this is different to comparison. Like this is an intentional practice where maybe it is on social media or it's someone that you know or it's a role model that you look up to And then writing down that person and saying, okay, what is it about this person that feels really good? Or what is it about their life that inspires me? So
Mhm.
you can use external sources for positive examples to kind of make, like, you can make a little, list of the attributes and the things that they're doing. Maybe it's like you like that they're really into fashion and that they get dressed every day, or they have
Mhm.
like a certain color that they wear, whatever. And you're like, I'm going to start to actually get dressed every day instead of just be in my yoga clothes or in my
Mhm.
sweats. Small example, or I'm going to start to wear some jewelry or some cute earrings because that makes me feel more feminine or more beautiful, right?
Mhm.
Connected to your
Mhm.
beauty. So I think that we can look for examples. And again, we want to make sure that it's not coming from that comparison mode.
Mhm. Mhm.
And just to close the loop on the positive projections, like what you see in other people already exists in you. And oftentimes, when we want something that someone else has, it's because it's showing us that our potential, it's showing us what's possible, and it's showing us that we already have some of that inside of us and we want more of it.
Oh, I love that. I think I like always think of the analogy of like water just reflects and I'm gonna butcher this, but I remember like reading something about how, we're like what, 70% water or something like that.
Mhm.
Clearly I'm not a scientist and I don't remember this from elementary school, but I was reading this thing talking about how like we attract other human beings who are similar to us, or when we are like looking to when we like a quality in someone else, it's because it's reflecting back onto us. Or even if we dislike something about someone else, it's an opportunity to reflect back on ourselves and be like, are they doing something that I don't like about myself? Or am I lacking in some place? And so I think that's a really beautiful example of just like look to others and what's reflecting back onto you. I think that's amazing.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think there's two other pieces that are coming through when you're like, well, what are some ways that women can connect to their feminine energy? One that resonates with a lot of women, and it doesn't resonate for everyone, but for me, I grew up as a dancer. And for me, music and movement like helps me to connect with my soul. And
Mm,
so many of us wait until it's like a birthday party or we're going out for a night out or something to dance. And it's like, what if you could just have a dance break in the afternoon or turn on some music and get on your yoga mat and close your eyes and just like see what happens, dance in front of the mirror when you're getting ready, dance in the shower. It's like, let's bring back that vitality and connect to this part of yourself that is aliveness, that's not just going through the motions, through music and through movement. So
mm,
that's something that's really, I think, can be an easy go-to, where it's like, make a playlist, make a new playlist, and you're like, cool,
mhm,
I'm excited to turn that song on. And as soon as you do, you're like, you want to move your body. Like, that's something that I would recommend. And then the other one that was coming through is connecting with nature. And we started this
mm,
conversation with talking about your house plants,
mhm,
and I'm looking outside my window right now and I have trees surrounding my house. And it's like the simple things, like it doesn't have to be that complicated, but it's like, can you go outside and go for a walk? Can you create space to go to the park or go down to the ocean or wherever you live? Like, spending a little bit more time in nature, that really helps to calm our nervous system. Like, there's so much science research on this, that
mhm,
when we're in nature, it helps to calm our nervous system. And I like to say that nature helps us to reconnect with our own true nature. I've
mm,
found that it's like the simplicity of it. It's like getting out of the noise. So even like maybe turning your phone off or putting it
mhm.
on silent and like not listening to a podcast maybe, and just going out into nature. And I find that that can be a quick shift in frequency and energy pretty quickly, and it's not expensive, it's not hard to do, it's just like making that part of your life again.
Yeah, it's something that's accessible to basically everyone, which I think is beautiful. And such a like great way to connect to nature and yourself. This has been amazing, Amy. Could you like, if you could, as we wrap up, if you could leave people with like one piece of advice when it comes to connecting with yourself, connecting with your masculine, your feminine, all of that, what would that be?
If you have a desire, like if you're feeling drawn to this work and you're like, I know something needs to change, or like, I know that the real me is more free, is more open, is more connected. If that desire is there, listen to that. Your intuition is always guiding you, and it speaks to you through feelings, through sensations, through desires, through emotions. And so keep following that. And I think really reminding you that this is a journey and that it's not going to happen overnight, and that's okay. Like being really graceful and patient with yourself in the process. And know that, like, even just listening to this podcast and being here is a really beautiful first step. And I think that, in our culture, we forget to acknowledge ourselves and celebrate ourselves and remind ourselves like how much we're doing and how far we've come. And that's a practice that I really encourage for all of my clients, is getting into the practice of acknowledging and celebrating yourself, right?
Mm,
Instead of tearing yourself down and talking about what you didn't do, it's like, okay, cool, I'm listening to this podcast. Is there one thing that I can take from today
mhm,
and try on, experiment with, and see
mm.
how that goes?
I love that. Oh, well, thank you so much, Amy. This has been so beautiful and so inspiring. I'm gonna have to do a little like thinking, sitting, like connecting after this to just like sit in my feminine. So thank you so much for all of your tips and tricks and wisdom. We always link everything in the show notes, but can you tell everyone where they connect with you online?
Yeah, thank you. So, since you're already listening to this podcast, I would recommend to come on over and check out my podcast, The Feminine Frequency. We have over 300 episodes and so much wisdom there. You can also connect with me on Instagram. You can find me at Amy Natalie Co. And I have a beautiful membership community. So, that would be a really great place to start if you're like, I want to start to explore connecting with my feminine energy. I want some mentorship. I want community. The Feminine Portal is my membership, and I think that's a really beautiful entry point to this work.
Oh, I love the name of that. That's amazing.
Yeah, thanks so
It's
much.
so, so good. Okay, well, thank you so much again for coming on. This has been incredible. And thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time.